All right. Happy Valentine's Day. Welcome back. I hope that you had a good weekend. I know that for a lot of you, you might have been just wrapping up, finishing up the small group assessment assignment, and you're probably a little bit burned out. I know this is the time of the quarter where it feels like with midterms and exams and exhaustion and all of that stuff is everywhere. So I want to acknowledge that and appreciate all the work that you've put in so far. I will try to turn around and grade those for you as soon as possible. And also, you can use your get out of jail free card. If you haven't used it already, turn it in by Sunday with no penalty. Or you can turn it in late, -5% for each day. So thanks for working on that. I'm excited to read and see your work in terms of applying small group to some of the ways that we participated in class. Yeah, I hope you're having a good Valentine's Day. When I was growing up and younger, I remember I'd do the thing where we give the little Valentines to everybody else in the little paper bags. So I had a weird association with Valentine's Day just being a ton of work to write those little greetings. So nice not to have to do that now. So to get us started for this week, we're going to be looking at leadership. So our focus is going to be what it means to be a good leader, how leadership works in small groups, and all of that good stuff. So what I'd like you to do is to take some time as part one of your attendance prompt for today to start out by thinking about a leader that you've encountered in your life that really stood out to you in a positive way. So for instance, maybe this is somebody like a family or parental figure that you really have a good leadership connection with. A boss, a team captain, a coach, or somebody like that. What makes them a good leader? And then secondarily, I want you to think about whether or not you've taken on a leadership role yourself. You have? What was that like? And if you haven't, what are some concerns that you have about being put in a leadership role? So I'll give you some time to brainstorm and think about that. And then I'll hear from everybody in the class to share what they think about their example of a leader and their own thoughts on that experience. you 2-3 more minutes to keep thinking about this. All right, go ahead and wrap up the current thought or idea that you're writing. And hang on to this for now. I will ask folks to share in just a little bit about what they notice in a leader that stood out to them and how they feel about their own experience with leadership. This is a good way of getting us thinking about some of the key ideas for this class. So just as a quick recap, because I know a couple of folks mentioned in feedback that making recap faster is a good idea. We talked last Friday about Robert's Rules of Order and the ways that we can use things like formal parliamentary procedure as a way to organize and make our meetings make sense and be structured well. And we use that to do a motion to get free chocolate offered at EOU for Valentine's Day. Looks like it didn't happen. That's okay. Again, this is a format that, while you might not have encountered or used it yourself, is super relevant to a lot of groups, including a group that you might be observing for your next assignment. And there were a lot of terms and ideas that were used to describe this entire formal process, the way that they create different motions, pass, and get things done, and so on. So what I want to do for today is to talk about the next writing assignment in the course, the small group observation. I also posted a little bit about that as a Canvas announcement to help you as well. We'll talk a little bit more about leadership for today, and we'll talk about what it means to be a good leader. So the next assignment for the course, and I know like the minute you get an assignment turned in, you get another one, isn't the greatest feeling, but I do want to give you a good buffer and amount of time to prepare and think about this assignment. It's due 3 weeks from today, giving you a good amount of time to start to plan and figure out what to do. So this assignment's a little bit different because in the first couple assignments, I've asked you to think about groups that you've been a member or you're currently a member of and your participation in groups in this class. What I'm asking you to do for this assignment is to think about a group that you are not a member of or part of. So for instance, this could be a club or activity on campus that you haven't been to, but you're interested in or want to learn a little bit more about. Maybe it's an organization in the community, can also be a digital or Zoom meeting, just so long as you have permission to attend that meeting. So I want to share the assignment prompt and guidelines just to help you know what to expect and to look for this assignment and how it's graded. So originally it was going to be due in week 8, but because of the snow days and delays and all of that, it's been pushed back down here to March 6th. Like before, you can click here to access the prompt and rubric for the assignment. So again, you should attend at least one meeting for a group you're not a member of It can be face-to-face or remote, but should be synchronous. That is, you should be observing the meeting as it's happening rather than watching anything like a recording. And this meeting should be at least a half hour long. With what we talked about with meetings last week, it's a good chance that most meetings go way longer than that. Clubs and activities on campus are definitely a really good starting point. And I'll send out some additional resources to help you to plan and figure out a group. And I'm happy to chat with you one-on-one if you need some additional help or pointers toward a group, or you're thinking about a group meeting and you're not sure if it meets the criteria for this assignment. It's 2 pages like before, and it deals with these 3 prompts to answer. The group that you chose, who were they, where did they meet, what was the context, and then talk about what the group meeting itself was like. How did they organize the meeting? How did they address problems and so on? Again, a lot of group meetings use formal structures like Robert's rules or maybe more informal organization. So I want you to speak a little bit to how they address issues in the meeting. Secondarily, I want you to think about leadership and roles of group members. So that's what we're getting into for today. How is the group run? How was leadership impacting the communication process? And then lastly, I want you to give this kind of assessment of the effectiveness of that group meeting. With what you've learned in the class about how group meetings can be run and what makes them effective, what stood out to you? What went well or what didn't? It's a chance for you to sort of think about how groups can work effectively to solve problems and to see if the group that you observed did that or not. And then the rubric on the next page, again, is pretty straightforward and similar to the other ones. This is out of 200 points or 20%. And similarly, I'm asking you to explain the group, explain its problem solving and leadership, and to really show good details and examples from that group meeting. And structure and style, again, are pretty similar. Please cite, please have organization. Happy to look over rough drafts, outlines, and anything else. Either email to me or in office hours. That's an option for you as well as you're working through that. My advice to you, knowing that it's not due until March 6th in 3 weeks, is to use this week as an opportunity to brainstorm. Maybe there's an activity or club on campus that you're not a member of, but you've heard of and think is kind of cool. This is a great way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, to observe the meeting as an outsider because you're just interested in it, and also to complete this assignment. So definitely start to think about what you might want to observe. You could also get in touch with friends, with professors or instructors you know who might be running or parts of groups. For instance, there's a lot of folks such as I think Dr. Carpenter, who does the millennial group on campus, and a few other ones like that. A lot of faculty will run or advise groups, so they're good people to get in touch with as well. So that's this assignment. Again, take some time to brainstorm for this week. You'll also notice that there's the presentations listed at the very final week of the class. I'll be talking a little bit more about that and sending out a calendar for that later this week. But during the last week, I'll ask you to share some of the things that you learned from your observation and sort of share with us what that group meeting was like. I'm sure questions will come up later, but does anybody have immediate questions about this assignment? Just want to put it on your radar as we get into week 7. So what I want us to do now is to return to the prompt that I asked you to do for the beginning of class and to share, first of all, the leader that you selected and a little bit about them. And then secondarily, if you've had to take on a leadership role, and if not, what concerns you have about being the leader. So let's start with folks on Zoom. So Olivia, how about you?
So the leader I selected was my dad. He is a basketball coach, and so I think he really embodies being selfless and wanting the best for everyone and really pushing people to do their best. I think he embodies those characteristics of being a good leader. And then at my last school, it was Snow College. It's a JUCO down in Utah. I was a team captain for my basketball position there. And it really I really had to help look out for most of the girls that were there, and like we had a lot of freshmen on that team that year, and so I kind of had to show them around and kind of be the example and help them through their first year of college.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Olivia. Incidentally, I know about Snow College. I have extended family in Manti, so thanks for sharing and
That's
getting us
cool.
started. JD, how about you?
Yeah, so I chose my mom. I know it's not a like she's not a coach or she's a president or what, but she's a good leader I select. So she's been taking over for me and my siblings and like as a single mom, and it was like 5 of us, so that's why I chose her. And back in high school, I was the president of our program, so it's not an easy job to take over, but yeah, it's an experience I have. And for making us decisions for like our activities, it's really tough. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Parents, as you mentioned, having a single mother, occupy these really important leadership roles and are so foundational in a lot of our lives, right? That's
Mhm.
definitely an example of having a good leader. Sure. Kevin?
So I wrote about my soccer team. So growing up, like when I was younger, underclassman, I had a captain, and I believe that a true leader doesn't command from the back; they command from the front. So like they lead by example. They don't boss around. They do the most, and then they ask for everyone else to do their part to help out as well.
Sure.
So I thought that's some great leadership traits that he had, is that he always was doing the most, and he was just holding everyone on the team accountable to do their part as well. And when I became captain, I kind of went to hold his roles, I guess, where I tried to do the same. Of I was always the one that was doing the most, always the one that was, pressing or doing the most in practice and whatnot, and then just asking and holding my teammates accountable. Wasn't bossing around, just holding them accountable.
Yeah, thank you for that. We'll talk in a little bit about deck leadership, which really exemplifies the things you mentioned, that a leader is there, right? They're all hands on deck and really contributing to the group actively rather than calling the shots from the sidelines. Lily?
A person I chose that was like a leader to me was she was not really like a professor. She was like an AC here in one of the buildings, but she was also like one of the leaders of like Latino Impacts. And like I was barely getting to like know the program and everything. And she was just like very inclusive and like friendly and like was always like open to like new suggestions. And like she made us feel like equals. So I think that's why like I chose her as a leader to stand out.
Mhm.
And a time I had to take on a leadership position or role is like in the RA position I am now. It's like I'm like taking in all these suggestions and like checking in on residents, especially those who need it a little bit more.
Mhm.
And I don't know, like it makes me like feel good as a leader to like get positive feedback and stuff, but I feel like there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, I really like the way that you bring in, this self-reflection that comes in a leader, being willing to take a step back and figure out how to better support people, which is a really important trait. Caleb?
So the leader that I selected was my dad, but I think what makes him a good leader is really all the negatives that he's gone through in his life and the way he's dealt with those. And I think it's a good quality to have, to be able to have something really bad happen to you and then you're trying to move forward the second after it's done, You're not dwelling on it. You're not stuck in the same spot because of it. So that's what I think makes him a good leader. I haven't really taken on a leadership role myself that I would consider a real leadership role, but I don't really have a lot of concerns about being a leader other than maybe letting the possible negativity overwhelm me.
Yeah, it's a challenging balance, right? A leader is really trying to move forward and not get super bogged down in problems of the past, but it can be all consumed, right? So that's definitely a thing to juggle. Val?
Did you say Bell?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It says Isabella there. So
No.
I wasn't sure how you prefer to be referred to.
I chose my old high school basketball coach. He always like pushed us to do our best, and like he was always the first one there, the last one to leave. And he had coached a lot of teams, and a lot of them were better than we were.
Mhm.
And he never really took it out on us that we weren't the best team, and if we lost to a team that was just downright better than us,
Mhm.
he was like not happy about it, obviously, but he never made it not enjoyable or anything. And then the only leadership role I've ever really taken was in sports in high school, but I guess volleyball would have been the biggest one. We were really freshman heavy, and we didn't really do that much, but we just kind of helped them out on the floor. A lot of them had never played high school sports, so yeah, it wasn't terrible.
Sure. Thanks for sharing. A lot of times, right, we feel more comfort when there's a leadership role that's, something we are pretty good at and know how to do and have done a bit before. And Josie.
Yeah, I chose one of my old high school soccer coaches. She won like coach of the year all of the years that she was a coach for our team, and she was just really awesome and really motivated all of us to just like do our best. She'd work right alongside us in practice and things, and she'd spend time after practice even if we needed help. And then for number 2, we as players would also have leadership roles. Like we would lead stretches. Some of us would just jump in and lead stretches and things like that. And it was just nice to like help out, I guess. And she made you feel appreciated. And yeah, you just felt like you were contributing to help practice move quicker and more efficiently. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Again, it's nice to have these little opportunities to take on a leadership role within a group like that one. So let's hear from folks here face to face, starting up here with you, John.
I said for the first one, I couldn't decide who was a good leader because it was tough to decide who. And then I said for traits, I said patience and kind of like a role model. I felt like was a good trait for a leader.
Mhm.
And then one time I was a leader was at work. We got a bunch of new people that were hired, so I kind of had to teach them what to do under the working with my boss basically to try and teach.
Sure. Yeah, training's a good example, right, of having to do that. Angela?
So for the leader that I selected, I chose Macy, who's been my team captain throughout high school and college. She always puts the needs of the team first, and she's always respectful. And what also makes her a good leader is that she is able to communicate messages effectively and also listens to all like the input from other team members and stuff. And I've been tasked with a leadership role kind of often, and I really don't like it because I feel like it's just too much pressure. And I have difficult times dealing with other people's problems.
Yeah. That's really sweet to hear. Macy's in my other class, and I can tell that, has those great qualities. But yes, dealing with conflict and like awful situations can be a challenge. And not, it's like garbage put in your lap and you don't really know what to do with it. JP?
Yeah, so I chose my little brother in quotes, because he's really just a kid that my family babysat for years. So I kind of grew up with him. And it's been really cool to watch him grow up as a team leader with all his basketball teams and stuff, and seeing like lead the team and like be their leader and like keep them hyped and like motivated during games, especially when teams are going bad. Make sure that like, you know, he keeps them going and positive. And as well as like when teams like target him and shut him out of the game, he does a really good job of like making sure that other people are able to step up and like take control. So he's really good at like divvying out like people and making sure that like everyone else is doing it part as well.
Awesome. You know, age, right, is not necessarily a predictor of being a good leader, that we can look to people that might be younger than us as really showing those good traits. Move over to this side.
I chose my high school wrestling coach. He was super encouraging, even like if there was a loss in the match, and he would encourage the other girls and shake their hands and give them high fives. If we did something wrong, though, he would discipline us, and we would know if we did something wrong, but he knew that we were going to grow from that in a good way, and that he wasn't necessarily mad at us. It's just what had to be done. He always came with a positive attitude to practice, even if there was something wrong with his family or something. He would say, look, I'm not feeling the best today, but we're gonna grind and get to work. And then I took on the leadership role of a public relations officer in high school. So I had to go to board meetings, which is a lot of work. You have to hand out awards and prep things for members and the community and stuff, but it really teaches life skills, public speaking, and just being happy for everyone, no matter the situation.
Yeah, good explanation of a lot of the positive benefits you can get when you're thrust in that position. Let's move over to Beck.
Yeah, leader I said was my dad. Was my basketball coach, and he also runs a restaurant. And I just see him deal with like conflict all the time. And I think for me, like, it's like if you were to be a leader, what are you nervous about?
Yeah, or like if you've been a leader, what was that like? If you have not been a leader, what are you anxious to be about?
Yeah, I was captain of the football team, track team, and I think just being a leader, you just got to make sure you communicate a lot. I think that's one of the biggest things. And then if you do have any conflict, I just think talking about it, just taking if it's one person, just have a one-on-one conversation with them.
Yeah, managing that like one-on-one time effectively in a way that's constructive and helps the person feel like a good part of the group is definitely an important skill for sure. Moving down.
I chose my high school track coach. I've known him since like I was in middle school, and like any lesson he ever teaches the team. When he was coaching, he made sure to apply it like himself. And like, he's the one who encouraged me to like run track over here at college, and to this day I still talk to him. He's talking about stuff like that. He's always, you know, talking about it.
Yeah.
And then for the second one, my senior year, I was captain of the track team. The program since I knew all the coaches and they kind of who I was. Like at times it was nerve wracking. We are a rowdy bunch, so like there wasn't a whole lot I could really do. But at the same time, like I could do my best to like make sure we all stay on track and make sure that I stayed between the line of like micromanaging and like actually just being a team captain. So try to do that. It was always nice to know it's just like pick me that one because I was capable of doing it. So that was always helpful at times.
Yeah. It's really good to have like good leaders or mentors that like stick with you and keep in contact with you even afterwards, right? Who are always there to help you out. Yeah, Kenna?
So a leader that I encountered was my grandfather. He had a lot of businesses going, and I feel like he walked a pretty good line between being a leader and being their boss, where he was still involved, but he would speak his mind, but also he would listen to them if they need to say something to him. He also kind of was like, treat others the way you want to be treated. So, if you want respect, you have to give respect kind of thing. And then for me in high school, I was captain of my different sports teams, track and volleyball. And something that my coaches seemed to do was they gave us a lot of responsibility just with the athletes. Like if they had questions, they're like, we'll go ask your captain and one of your peers kind of thing. And so I dealt a lot with just the other athletes that were younger than me or even my same age. And just coordinating a lot of things with that.
Yeah, it's a lot of plates to spin, but it can also feel really good to have things managed effectively.
One leader that I worked under was the marshal commander of the 360 Elite Corps, which was a Clone Wars group again in the Discord server. And he organized events, he organized role plays, he organized missions, trainings, and all the missions and stuff like this. And so later I was like, oh, I kind of like doing this, so I decided to create a course of my own. And now I basically do that same thing, but the group was disbanded, and so I just decided to venture out on my own. And I did have a few problems, mainly because there was like people would create their own custom armor. So I was like, okay, we're going to make uniforms specific to these types of troopers that you are, and this is where you're going to be, this is where you're going to do, this is what the training is going to be like. So I really was strict on what everybody's going to be.
Yeah, it's a good example of like having a really specific sort of set of guidelines for participation and membership and engagement, especially using channels like Discord to do so. And right.
Leader I chose, he was an old buddy of mine, he was a bull rider as well as my youth pastor and stuff. But great mentor in the same sense as well. To me, he was a great leader because he just like had that positive energy, and I feel like positive energy spreads, but he also had just like good sense of like confidence, maturity, respect, knowledge, and that kind of stuff. And I feel like all those are pretty important because you want people that have a lot of trust in you. If you got confidence in what you're doing, people are gonna kind of look up to you and be like, he's confident, I'm confident kind of thing. Again, that positive energy just kind of spreading up something he's really good at, but also have that maturity to know like the situation of where and when for different aspects, and like when you need to be more toned down and responsible and like straightforward, or when you can be kind of goofy and outgoing and kind of stuff like that. And that's kind of the leader I like to try to be, especially in my RA position. Try to be somebody who is serious when I need to be serious, but for the most part, I want to be fun and outgoing and create a good environment. And he was just a good role model for that. So
That's great. Thanks, Ryan. Like context, right? Context matters. Being serious and focused when you need to be, but still letting people have fun and socialize. If somebody has an iron fist the whole time, then it makes the communication and engagement in the group not go well. So I really appreciate you all taking the chance to share. I really wanted to take the time to have you all listen and hear from each other for a couple of reasons. First of all, to help you think about what it means to be a good leader in your own life. And also to understand, what we notice as common trends. A few things that stood out to me as common themes. First of all, the idea of accessibility, right? A good leader is somebody that's available, that you can reach out to, who is there to help you no matter what. A good leader is also somebody that thinks about the situation and context, is there and is prepared. And as you all brought up, right? Good leaders are role models. They help us to develop good leadership qualities for ourselves because we're looking to them as an example. To give you an example of my own, one leader that really stood out to me was my old debate coach. He was this like very kind of grumpy, kind of crotchety guy who seemed like he was like 20 years older than he actually was. So I didn't think he liked me at first, but as I got to know and work with him, I realized he's the type of person that like will absolutely go up to bat and fight for you when you're like applying to grad school or trying to get a scholarship or all that. And so it was really cool to feel like I had built up a good trust and relationship with somebody that I knew was going to be in my corner. As far as the leadership role, when I was in fifth grade, I had the chance to be a reading buddy to a third grader, which was designed to help with mentorship and helping younger kids develop reading skills. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed helping him learn to read, and that got me interested in wanting to be a teacher. So, opportunities like that where you get to become a leader in a situation is a great way to figure out the skills and the things that you're interested in. One big takeaway that I want to give you for today is that oftentimes we tend to think about the idea of being a born leader, right? Or of like having a leadership gene or something like that. And that gets talked about a lot. And while certainly, yes, there are some qualities like extroversion and decisiveness that we might associate with being a good leader. Most of what being a good leader is learned. So that's to say, if you don't feel like you're a good leader or you're not excited about doing that, that's okay. It's a skill to develop. And also that if you feel like you're a good leader or, oh, I'm great at doing all that, oftentimes there are still things to work on and to improve, right? That people who think that they're born leaders are not necessarily good leaders. So it's a set of learning skills that we all eventually have to use at some point in our lives. We've talked a little bit about what a leader is already, but leaders, right, are dealing with a crisis or challenge. It might be a game, an event, an activity. There's something to do, or there's something that needs to be addressed. I really like this idea that folks brought up, that they're not dwelling, but they're moving forward. And to develop a plan of attack or action to deal with a certain type of issue. Whether it's balancing budget or meals for a family, doing something like coaching and preparing for a game and doing successful in that game, right? Or finding a way to support a student as a teacher. That's sort of what leadership is about, is figuring out what to do. I really like the way that folks like Ryan brought up the importance of context, right? That situation and being able to communicate effectively as a leader that is appropriate and makes sense is a good idea. If you're doing like a holiday party, you're not going to suddenly tell people about the work they have to do that's due next week, right? If you've watched like The Office, a lot of examples of bad leadership that doesn't really think about context, right? Leaders are looked to that by doing a good job, and as folks like Devin brought up, leading by example really helps to ensure that people are looking at you. My last class brought up the idea that when you're a leader, oftentimes there's a spotlight and scrutiny under you that you don't otherwise experience. Again, leadership's not necessarily an innate skill. It's not something we're necessarily born with, but that we develop. And even though we don't like being a leader, it's something we eventually have to do, right? Leadership is a super marketable skill and something that just about every employer wants to see. Even if you're starting at an entry-level position, somebody is going to want you to be a leader because they want to see that you have the ability to take on more responsibilities and tasks, and also that you're somebody trustworthy that can be left to accomplish specific tasks on your own. They're important skills to think about. So there's a lot of things you all brought up about what it means to be a good leader, and I think there's some 4 major categories that we can use to separate those out a little bit more. Self-awareness, that a group leader thinks about and considers who they are in relationship to other people. They're responsible and on task, right? A bad leader is somebody that like spends money that's like in the group's budget without being allowed to do that, or something like that, right? They're aware of who they are, they're aware of being ethical. An internalized moral perspective is the sense of right and wrong, right? It's about figuring out what to do, what's okay and what's not okay. As folks brought up, it's about using things like discipline or, calling something out that's out of line. A moral compass being the sense, right? That you have a clear path on what to do. Maybe, for instance, your Discord server or group has terms or expectations about how people behave. Being balanced is important too, right? A bad leader is somebody who hears one person say a rumor and suddenly reacts, right? Balanced processing means that you're hearing out the opinions of other people and that you make a reasoned judgment yourself. Often it means you take a step back rather than a snap decision. And then transparency, being transparent about who you are, how you're going to behave and fit in with the group. As you all brought up, we like leaders who feel like they're actively involved and are a part of the group, are putting in the work and doing the time. And that's a big element of being a good and transparent leader. So I mentioned before this idea of deck leadership. Deck leadership being that a good leader, right, is somebody that is on deck. So this comes from sort of military language, right, where deck leadership is referred to as somebody who is, as a leader, actively working on, putting down the anchor, raising the sails, doing all the things you would need to do if you were working on a ship. So in this way, it means you are able to learn what's going well and what isn't in the group. For instance, maybe certain people in the group are interacting well, but also are getting off task. Maybe there are some people that work really well together. You can pick up on that as a leader that chooses to participate. And, right, they're more likely to work if they see you there too. So it's really focused on building those relationships by being there, being involved. We don't like leaders that are just like sitting in a chair and saying, go do this, right? and don't seem to be involved with us or understand what we're doing. If they seem out of touch, that's a big problem. So there's some categories or ways to break down leadership that I want to touch on a little bit. We'll pick up more on some of these next class. And these are some traits, different contexts or situations of leadership, functional leadership, and transformative leadership. Traits are the things that you all mentioned as many of the things that we see as being signs of a good leader. Situational or context leadership means being the leader in the moment. We're in a particular situation where something's come up. Functional leadership is tasks and is focused on goals. And then transformative leadership are those folks that really are like changing your perspective or attitude on life or how to accomplish something. There's a lot of traits that have been identified. You don't need to write these down or know these down word for word or anything like that. But these are some general things that have been noticed to be things that good leaders do. Being clear and focusing on achievement, right? If you're a coach, you're going to try to help the team win the game. Being adaptable, able to adjust. Something major has happened, or you have somebody in your team who's sick and you got to swap somebody else in, right? You're adapting to that situation. People mentioned having good positive energy, right? Being charismatic, creating a good impression with other people. Being intelligent, right? Being able to understand and be an expert on the issue, right? Your volleyball coach better know a thing or two about volleyball. If so, they're probably pretty qualified. Innovation would mean coming up with clever solutions or ideas given the situation. Being persistent, able to continue to work on solving a problem without giving up really easily is important. Holding themselves responsible if they get something wrong or mess something up, right? Speaking with the group as a leader that's transparent. Being confident, we like confidence. Confidence helps us to feel like we can put our faith and trust into somebody else. Confidence is oftentimes a fake it till you make it. If you're, for the very first time, finding yourself in the leadership role. Sociability, if there's somebody that you can talk to and reach out to. Again, some of you mentioned that the people you know are good leaders are people you continue to talk to. And of course, communication. You've got to be a good communicator to be a good leader. You've got to convey what you want the group to do, what your role in the group is, and so on. So communication is key and a huge element that we look for. When we think about situational leadership, a really good example of this is say somebody suddenly has a seizure or is like choking on something or is drowning, right? You're going to try to get somebody who's an expert in CPR. We're able to help in an emergency who comes in, and tries to save that person's life. So that's sort of situational or contextual leadership. It's a leader for the moment, a person who comes in and is able to adapt to or address a really serious issue. So again, somebody like a person who comes in and knows what to do to perform CPR would be a good example. Situational leaders, right, can tell us what to do, say, go do this. They can sell or try to get us on board. We need to go perform CPR. It looks like that person is not doing well. They can participate, be involved in the process. Or they can delegate, right? Delegating is not telling because delegating is this active process where you figure out who in a group is going to focus on which particular thing. Again, we'll pick up a little bit more on some of these ideas next class. Another idea here that's important is that different leaders have different levels of maturity, and also different group members have different levels of maturity. So for instance, if a group is not confident, the leader is going to have this larger active role. As leaders become more mature, they also will be able to oversee more complicated situations with members of the group. So again, we'll pick up more on this one, but I just wanted to preview that group members work together based on the maturity of the group members and therefore how involved and active the leader is going to be with that in mind. There's a lot of goals of functional leadership we'll talk about next time. But again, leaders are very much focused in the functional lens about figuring out the goal or the plan and figuring out a way to solve and to address that issue. And then lastly, a transformative leader, right, is really trying to motivate. It's thinking about theory why, this idea that people are naturally trying to do a good job and really helping to motivate them to do so. Oftentimes a transformative leader will engage our minds, right, get us really thinking about an issue. Having us get individual attention or focus, feeling like we're cared about. Using something like inspiration, right? If you've seen classic movies like Remember the Titans, where there's this inspirational speech for a coach, right? It's an example of how motivation happens. And influence, that we're able to have a leader impact and get us to care about something. So what I want you to do in the remaining few minutes that we have is to pick which of these 3 leadership styles you feel like would best fit the leader that you chose in this prompt in the beginning of class. Either a situational leader, who's a leader in the moment, a functional leader, that's focused on a particular task or goal, or a transformative leader, who's more focused on changing the perspective of the group. Just take a couple minutes to think about which of these 3 would be the best fit. Go ahead and wrap up what you're currently writing. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect, just which category you feel like makes sense. All right, so we started a lot of threads for today about leadership, what it means to be a good leader and participate. We talked about how leadership is aligned with some of these goals and purposes, how leaders communicate and work together, and leadership being a really key thing that people want folks to be able to do. Next class, we'll talk a little bit more about leadership, including the ways that good leaders can engage with and participate in groups. So go ahead and email or pass forward your attendance for today. Have a great rest of your Monday. Enjoy your Valentine's Day. And I'll see you again for Wednesday's class. Have a great afternoon.